Late one night, I was curled up in bed scrolling through anonymous posts on my tablet when one caught my eye. My daughter scored 1560 on her SAT, but she's determined to leave home for an out-of-state university. How can I get her to choose a local school instead and stay with me forever? The comments tore into the parent for being selfish and controlling. However, the original poster insisted she'd sacrificed everything to raise her daughter alone and couldn't bear the thought of growing old with no one by her side. Amidst the barrage of criticism, I saw the top-rated reply. These high school seniors won't see it coming. Wait until she's asleep, take her phone, use the verification code to reset her application portal password, and change all her college choices 2 minutes before the deadline. Once the admissions results are finalized, fake a medical emergency and end up in the ER. She'll be too guilty to ask for a gap year. As someone who had also just scored high on the exams this year, I was shaking with anger. I was about to leave a furious reply when I instinctively reached for the phone charging beside my pillow. It was gone. Mom. No answer came from the living room. The treacherous top-rated comment flashed through my mind again. Wait until she's asleep. Take her phone. Reset the password. Change all her applications to in-state schools. Barefoot, I stood frozen in my bedroom doorway, my palms slick with sweat. Then I looked up. A faint blue glow spilled from the end of the hallway. The unmistakable light of a computer monitor. Tap. Top. Top. The keyboard clicked steadily, each keystroke sounding like another nail being hammered into a coffin. When I leaned around the corner, the blood drained from my face. My mother, Whitney Richmond, sat hunched over the computer desk. The cold blue light from the screen cast shifting shadows across her face. She clutched my phone in one hand while the other flew across the keyboard. On the screen was the state university application portal. My name, my exam registration number, and my social security number. Every bit of my personal information was there. At the bottom of the page, bold red letters stared back at me. Application submitted. First choice, Westbridge Business College. Second choice, North Valley Institute of Information Technology. These were schools I'd never even heard of, bottom-tier colleges no one with my score would ever consider. My hard-earned score of 1560 had been thrown straight into the trash. Mom, what are you doing? I lunged forward and ripped the mouse out of her hand. She shot to her feet. The instant she saw me, panic flashed across her face. Then just as quickly, she clutched her chest. Her body arched backward. Bang! She hit the floor hard. My heart. Gemma. My heart hurts. She writhed across the floor, eyes rolling back, gasping for air as her arms and legs twitched violently. I froze. Half the fury burning inside me vanished in an instant. What if this wasn't an act? Mom, don't scare me. I dropped beside her. She grabbed my arm with surprising strength, her fingernails digging into my skin. Call 911. Hurry. I'm dying. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped my phone as I dialed. During the 15 minutes it took the ambulance to arrive, my mother continued, fighting for her life. I knelt beside her, my mind completely blank. The emergency room hallway was cold and painfully bright. I sat in a plastic chair, trembling so hard I couldn't tell whether it was from the cold or from rage. My stomach churned, and my throat tightened as if something huge had lodged there, impossible to swallow. Half an hour later, the doctor stepped out. Are you Ms. Whitney Richmond's family? I'm her daughter. Well, it's nothing serious. She had a stress response brought on by emotional distress. Her ECG is normal. Blood pressure's a little elevated, but she'll be fine after some rest. Dr. Bennett removed his mask. She doesn't even need medication. I stared at him for 3 long seconds, unable to say a word. No heart condition. No angina. No near-death emergency. She'd faked the whole thing. I borrowed a phone from one of the nurses and logged into the university application portal with trembling fingers. A line of red text filled the screen. This application cycle has been locked. No further changes may be made. The deadline had passed 47 minutes earlier. I handed the phone back to the nurse. Thank you. My voice was so flat it frightened even me. At 3 in the morning, my mother was snoring loudly in her hospital bed. I quietly reached beneath her pillow and retrieved my phone. I opened the anonymous local forum. The original poster had updated the thread an hour earlier. Thanks for the advice. It worked. I faked passing out and got myself admitted to the ER. The little brat is sitting here crying her eyes out, watching over me. She doesn't dare bring up taking a gap year. As I stared at the words, the little brat, I bit down so hard on my lip that I tasted blood. My fingers trembled, the tips having gone ice cold. Those 3 words cut deeper than the poisonous advice itself. The anonymous poster was my mother. The next comment made me feel even sicker. A user named Parker Dad replied, "Congratulations. Once she graduates, have her marry my son. I'll pay you $50,000. My mother immediately responded with a thumbs-up emoji. My stomach churned. Then someone else asked, keeping her close is one thing, but ruining her future. Is it really worth it? My mother answered that one too. Girls leave once they get married anyway. Parker dad promised that as long as she stays here, she'll marry his son after graduation. I'll get $50,000 for my retirement. And he'll pull some strings to get my brother a county job. Now that's a real bargain. My grip tightened around my phone as I struggled to breathe. The hospital room was quiet. My mother rolled over, mumbled something in her sleep, then started snoring again. 18 years. She'd spent all that time lamenting to everyone how hard it was to raise a daughter as a single mother. The truth? My tuition had been covered by scholarships and financial aid. Every dollar of spending money came from collecting recyclables, handing out flyers, and stocking shelves at the grocery store. I lived in the dorms all 3 years of high school. She never gave me a single dollar toward my monthly food expenses. I couldn't even bring myself to order the cheapest pasta in the cafeteria. Most days, I survived on plain dinner rolls and mashed potatoes. Meanwhile, she spent 5 days a week feeding the slot machines. During my junior year, I won first prize in a state academic competition. The prize money was $3,000. Before I could even enjoy it, she took $2,500 to pay off one of my uncle's gambling debts. She kept the remaining $500. I'll save it for you, she said. I never saw a cent of it again. After sending the money to my Uncle Derek that day, she sat on the couch smoking in silence. Ashes fell onto her pants, but she didn't even brush them away. Then she quietly said, "My mother did the same thing to me. She gave all the money she'd saved for my wedding to Derek." Back then, I hadn't understood what she meant. Now I did. She'd been sacrificed once. So she believed sacrificing me was only natural. As for my 40-year-old Uncle Derek, he still lived off my mother. Whenever he lost money gambling, he came begging her for cash. When he wanted a new phone, he went to her. When he started dating someone, she paid for that too. She handed over the money without hesitation, then turned around and told me, "Your uncle's had a hard life." The only thing she'd ever bought me was a $30 pair of winter boots. She talked about that purchase for the next 6 months. Back then, she'd still ask whether I was cold. On freezing winter mornings, her fingers would be bright red as she crouched down to tie my shoelaces. Then she'd look up and smile at me. That felt like another lifetime. Somewhere along the way, the only things left in her world were the slot machines and her brother. She used my money to pay off his debts, then bought herself a gold necklace. And now, it wasn't enough to drain my bank account. She intended to sell me too. $50,000. Dawn's light slowly crept through the hospital window. I sat there all night, forcing every ounce of anger back down. My application had already been locked in the portal. Even if I confronted her now, at worst she'd get scolded, and I'd gain nothing. Not yet. I opened my phone and hired a same-day courier. At 7 the next morning, my mother woke up. When she saw me still sitting beside her bed, her eyes immediately reddened. She grabbed my hand. "Gemma, you scared me to death last night. You're all I have. If you move away, what if I suddenly die? No one would even know." The tears came instantly, streaming down the wrinkles in her face. I simply looked at her. She wiped her eyes and choked back another sob. "I know your grades are good, but our local universities are perfectly fine. You'll stay close to home, and I can still take care of you." Take care of me? I took a deep breath and forced a few tears into my eyes. "Mom, I'm not leaving. I'll stay here with you." Her tears vanished almost instantly. A smile spread across her face as she patted my hand. "That's my good girl." That afternoon, after she was discharged, I picked up the package the courier had delivered to the ER reception desk. As soon as we got home and she went to take a shower, I opened it. I tucked a miniature camera deep inside the leaves of the potted pothos, angling the lens toward the couch and coffee table. Then I took out 2 digital voice recorders. One went underneath the edge of the coffee table. The other was attached to the side of the TV stand. Perfect. My mother walked out of the bathroom and glanced at me. "Derek's family is coming to stay for a few days tomorrow. Clean out the guest room. Oh, and Mr. Parker is bringing his son over in a couple of days. Dress up a little. Don't look like such a bookworm." "Okay," I said. Satisfied, she nodded and wandered into the kitchen, humming to herself as she started making lunch. I sat alone in my room, staring at my backpack with its hidden surveillance equipment. "Mom, the biggest mistake you've ever made was thinking all I knew how to do was cry." Early the next morning, Uncle Derek showed up at our front door carrying 2 oversized duffel bags. Behind him were Aunt Brenda and my cousin Tyler. Between the 3 of them, they'd brought 6 bags, filling the entire entryway. Mom made me sleep on a mattress in the living room, so Uncle Derek's family could take the guest bedroom. What's wrong with a kid sleeping in the living room? They came all this way. Can't you be a little considerate? I didn't argue. I simply gathered my bedding and carried it out. The first thing Aunt Brenda did after settling in was announce that she was helping me organize my room. She started pulling stacks of books off my shelves and stuffing them into garbage bags. Review guides, notebooks, practice tests, everything. "These old things are just taking up space. You're not going to college anymore, So what's the point of keeping them? I stepped forward to stop her. Aunt Brenda, those are my things. She looked at me sideways. Your mom already told us you're not going to school. You're getting married. What good are these books now? Tyler needs somewhere to put his gaming console. Tyler was 15 and already pushing 200 pounds. He was rummaging through my closet. He picked up one of my neatly folded bras. Hey Gemma, is this one too small for you? Without even looking up, Aunt Brenda said, Tyler, knock it off. That's your cousin's. Instead, he swung it around in his hand, laughing. I snatched it away. From the kitchen, Mom shouted, Gemma, stop being so stingy. Tyler's family. I looked around my room to see that everything had been turned upside down. My fist slowly clenched. While Tyler was glued to his video game, I accidentally stepped on the power cord. The screen went black, and he let out an enraged scream. Aunt Brenda stormed into the room, yelling at me for not watching where I was going. Without saying a word, I bent down and plugged it back in. I'd put up with it. At 2 that afternoon, the doorbell rang. Mom rushed to answer it, smiling so hard her face looked ready to split. 2 men stood outside. The first was a short, heavy-set man in his 50s with a balding head, a protruding belly, and thick gold rings covering his fingers. It was Martin Parker, the man behind the anonymous Parker Dad account. Standing beside him was a man in his early 20s with bleached blonde hair, a snake tattoo wrapped around his neck, and 3 earrings in his left ear. His son Logan Parker. Last year, he'd shoved a 70-year-old woman down a flight of stairs in his apartment complex. His father paid $200,000 to settle the case before it ever reached court. Kumain. Gemma, go pour your future husband a glass of water. The moment Logan saw me, his eyes lit up. He strode over and reached for my waist. Well damn, my future wife's even prettier than I expected. I sidestepped him, so his hand closed on empty air. The grin on his face disappeared. Mom slammed her hand against the table. What are you pulling away for? The Parkers own 3 apartment buildings in town. A girl like you should be grateful they picked you. Uncle Derek wandered out of the bedroom carrying a mug and a cigarette. My job as head of security is riding on Mr. Parker. Don't ruin the family's future by acting like you don't know a good thing when you see it. Is that a permanent position or just temporary? I asked casually. Uncle Derek answered without hesitation. Permanent, of course. Mr. Parker promised me himself. Standing directly beneath the hidden camera, he repeated the most important detail all over again. Aunt Brenda leaned against the doorway with a mocking smile. So what if you scored a 1560? A girl who marries well is the real winner. Logan wandered over again. This time he reached out and grabbed my chin. Quit playing hard to get. Sooner or later, you'll be mine anyway. I slapped his hand away and took a step back. Mom's shrill voice rang through the house. Gemma Richmond, keep this up and I'll drag your name through the mud. The living room fell silent. I lowered my head and stared at my shadow on the floor. Then I looked up and smiled. Okay. Everyone froze. But, I continued. If we're getting engaged, shouldn't we do it properly? Mom's expression changed instantly from fury to delight. Martin slapped his thigh and burst out laughing. Now that's what I like to hear. Straight to the point. Mom wrapped an arm around my shoulders. We'll hold your college send-off party and engagement party together next week. We'll make it the biggest event this town's ever seen. Sounds good. I smiled and nodded. What none of them knew was that from the moment they walked through my front door, my hidden camera had captured every second of it. The moment Mom pocketed the $50,000 engagement deposit from Martin, she started acting like she'd won the lottery. She got her hair done, bought herself a bright red dress, and told anyone who would listen. My daughter's marrying into one of the richest families in town. Uncle Derek wasn't any quieter. He bragged everywhere he went that he was about to become head of security. Meanwhile, I played the part of the obedient daughter. Every day, I sweetly texted Logan. Logan, what did you have for lunch today? Your tattoo looks so cool. His replies came almost instantly. Thinking about you. When are you gonna come out so I can steal a kiss? A voice message popped up right after. I played half of it before stopping. In a low voice, he said he'd dreamed about me all night, and if he told me what happened in the dream, I'd be too embarrassed to hear it. My stomach turned as I stared at the screen. Every message was riddled with typos, and every sentence ended with a grinning emoji. But I knew exactly what he liked. I pressed screenshot, saving every message in an encrypted folder labeled Evidence 3. Then I added one more text. You're the sweetest, Logan. Talk tomorrow. The moment I hit send, I tossed my phone onto the foot of the bed as if it were contaminated. Just typing those words made me want to throw up. Logan, on the other hand, loved every second of it. His messages became increasingly explicit. I saved screenshots of every single one. 3 days later, I told Mom I wanted to stop by the Parker's house and help clean. I want to make a good impression on my future in-laws. She was so thrilled and even drove me there herself. Mrs. Margaret Parker happened to be out of town visiting relatives. I spent 2 hours mopping floors, wiping down furniture, and washing dishes. Just before I left, while Martin and Logan were smoking on the rooftop deck, I slipped a digital voice recorder beneath the living room couch. 3 days later, I returned with an excuse to retrieve it. That night, hidden beneath my blankets with my headphones on, I listened to every second of the recording. Mom's voice came first. At the engagement party, get a few drinks into her. Then have Logan lock her in one of the bedrooms. The next morning, I'll bring the relatives in to catch them together. Martin chuckled. And then? My mother. Once her reputation's ruined, she'll have no choice but to marry him. After the marriage license is signed, transfer the $50,000 straight into Derek's account. Martin, deal. Oh, and about that financial aid, when the time comes, go talk to old Bill in the admissions office. When I took off my headphones, my hands were shaking, not from fear but from excitement. I turned on my computer and compressed the audio recording, surveillance footage, forum screenshots, and chat logs into a single file. Then I drafted an email and sent it to the state's organized crime tip line. A second email went to the State Department of Education's Office of Inspector General. After hitting send, I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. I smiled for a very long time. There was one thing my mother would never know. The day after my SAT scores were released, I'd already passed the honors admissions program interview at Northwood State University, the state's flagship university. I'd signed the enrollment agreement, and my student record had already been transferred. My place was secure. Whatever was entered into the regular application portal would never be processed. The applications she'd worked so hard to change had been nothing more than an empty shell. I'd left them there as bait on purpose. The combined college send-off and engagement party was scheduled for Saturday. Mom booked 18 tables at the nicest venue in town, the Grand Oak. On Saturday morning, she called me while wearing her new red dress. You ungrateful brat. Everyone's already here, and you're still dragging your feet. Get over here right now. If you embarrass me today, I'll break your legs. Standing in front of the mirror, I straightened my collar. In my hand was the flash drive containing every piece of evidence. I'm on my way, Mom. I ended the call and looked at my reflection. Mom, you only have a few more minutes before everything falls apart. The Grand Oak Banquet Hall was draped in gold ribbons and bright red banners. 2 massive archways of red roses stood at the entrance, framing an oversized poster of my face alongside Logan Parker's. Beneath my name, someone had printed, in bold gold letters, future bride of the Parker estate. 18 round tables packed the room, filled with relatives, local town officials, neighbors, and slot machine regulars my mother had invited to boast. At the head table sat my mother, wearing her vibrant red dress, a gold necklace gleaming at her throat. Beside her sat Uncle Derek in a tight, borrowed suit, loudly clinking glasses with Martin Parker. Aunt Brenda was busy piling cucumbers onto her plate, while Tyler sat glued to his phone, ignoring everyone around him. Logan sat near the center of the table, wearing a white designer shirt that stretched tight over his shoulders, his snake tattoo creeping up his neck. When he saw me walk into the hall, his eyes narrowed into a dark, possessive grin. Look who finally decided to show up. My mother announced loudly into a wireless microphone, her voice echoing through the hall's sound system. My daughter Gemma scored high on her exams, but she knows where her heart belongs, right here in town, taking care of her mother and marrying into the finest family we have. The room erupted into polite applause and cheerful toasts. What a good girl, a neighbor called out. 1560 on her SATs and she's staying home. Whitney, you raised a saint. That's right. Uncle Derek boomed, rubbing his beer belly. Family comes first. A girl doesn't need to wander off to some big city when Mr. Parker's family is right here. I walked slowly down the carpeted aisle, my hands tucked inside the pockets of my light gray trench coat. My thumb rested against the smooth metal casing of the flash drive. Gemma, come sit next to Logan, Martin Parker said, waving a thick, ring-adorned hand. We were just discussing the wedding date. October looks good. Gives us time to set up your uncle's new office at my security firm. Logan stood up and reached for my wrist. Come on, sweetie. Take a seat. I sidestepped his hand smoothly, stepping up onto the small wooden stage where the podium and projector stand were set up. Before we sit down, I said, my voice crisp and quiet, yet carrying cleanly through the microphone on the podium. I prepared a special slideshow for my mother and my future in-laws, to thank them for everything they've planned for me. My mother's face lit up with overwhelming pride. She turned to the crowd, clasping her hands together. Listen to that. She made a slideshow. Oh, she's always been such a thoughtful child. Put it on the big screen, kid. Martin chuckled, taking a sip of his whiskey. Let's see what you've got. I plugged the flash drive into the laptop connected to the venue's ceiling projector. The massive white screen hanging behind the head table flickered to life. Wait, Uncle Derek muttered, squinting at the screen. Isn't that Gemma's bedroom? The high-definition video footage began playing. It showed my bedroom from 3 days ago. Uncle Derek was standing by my bookshelf, holding a beer mug, while Aunt Brenda stuffed my textbooks into garbage bags. These old things are just taking up space. Aunt Brenda's voice rang through the venue's high-end speakers, crystal clear. You're not going to college anymore, so what's the point of keeping them? The crowd fell silent. A few relatives lowered their forks, frowning at the screen. My mother's smile froze. Gemma, what is this? Turn that off. Sure, Mom, I said into the microphone, my face serene. It gets better. The video cut to the living room footage from 4 days ago. Martin Parker and Logan walked into the house. The video showed Logan reaching for my waist, then grabbing my chin, his voice echoing loudly across 18 tables. Well, damn. My future wife's even prettier than I expected. Quit playing hard to get. Sooner or later, you'll be mine anyway. Gasps rippled through the banquet hall. Several guests near the front row leaned back, looking at Logan in disgust. Martin Parker's face flushed dark red. He slammed his glass onto the table. What the hell is this? Who authorized this video? Turn it off. Uncle Derek roared, stumbling out of his chair. Gemma, turn it off right now. Don't touch the laptop, I warned, stepping in front of the podium. Unless you want me to turn up the volume. Before anyone could reach the stage, the audio recording from the hidden microphone beneath the Parker's couch began to play. My mother's voice vibrated through every speaker in the room. At the engagement party, get a few drinks into her. Then have Logan lock her in one of the bedrooms. The next morning, I'll bring the relatives in to catch them together. Martin Parker's recorded voice replied. And then? My mother. Once her reputation's ruined, she'll have no choice but to marry him. After the marriage license is signed, transfer the $50,000 straight into Derek's account. Martin, deal. Oh, and about that financial aid. When the time comes, go talk to old Bill in the admissions office. Silence, absolute, suffocating silence, fell over the entire Grand Oak banquet hall. Every single guest sat frozen. Neighbors stared at my mother with wide, horrified eyes. Townspeople who had come to celebrate looked between Martin Parker and my mother as if they were looking at monsters. My mother stood at the head table, her face drained of every drop of color. Her lips trembled, her hands shaking so violently she knocked her glass of wine onto her bright red dress. No, she whimpered, her voice cracking. That's not me, that's someone faked my voice. AI. I smiled into the microphone. Then let's look at something real. The projector switched to a series of high-resolution screenshots. First was the anonymous forum thread from 2 weeks ago. My daughter scored 1560 on her SAT. How can I get her to choose a local school instead? Then came the top-rated reply, followed by my mother's update. Thanks for the advice. It worked. I faked passing out and got myself admitted to the ER. The little brat is sitting here crying her eyes out. She doesn't dare bring up taking a gap year. Then came the text messages from Logan. Explicit, vulgar, harassing texts sent over the past 4 days, accompanied by screenshots of my mother accepting the $50,000 bank transfer into her private account. A woman at table 3 gasped loudly, covering her mouth. She faked an emergency to ruin her own daughter's application. She sold her for $50,000. A neighbor shouted, standing up. Look at those texts. That boy belongs in prison. Disgusting. Another guest spat. Absolute trash. Logan's face turned white, then dark with rage. He kicked his chair back, roaring as he lunged toward the stage. You crazy bitch. I'll break your neck. He took 3 steps before heavy iron doors at the back of the banquet hall slammed open. State police. Nobody move. A squad of armed state troopers and investigators from the State Department of Education stormed into the hall, their heavy boots thundering against the hardwood floor. Leading them was an officer holding an arrest warrant. Logan stopped dead in his tracks. His eyes widened in sheer panic as 2 state troopers pinned his arms behind his back, forcing him down onto the floor before he could even scream. Logan Parker, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit sexual assault, felony harassment, and violation of probation, the lead officer declared, snapping steel handcuffs around his wrists. Dad, help me. Logan shrieked, thrashing against the pavement. Dad. Martin Parker stumbled back, his face gray. Officer, this is a misunderstanding. I have connections with Chief Martin Parker, a senior investigator from the Department of Education, stepped forward, pulling out a second warrant. You are under arrest for federal wire fraud, attempted bribery of public officials, and illegal tampering with higher education financial aid systems. 2 more officers stepped up, grabbing Martin's thick wrists and cuffing him on the spot. The banquet hall descended into complete chaos. Guests scrambled out of their chairs, filming the entire scene on their phones, shouting in disbelief as the town's richest man and his son were paraded out in handcuffs. Uncle Derek tried to slip out through the side exit behind the kitchen doors, but an officer cut him off, grabbing him by his jacket collar. "Derek Richmond? You're being brought in for questioning regarding unregistered gambling debts and involvement in extortion." "I didn't do anything," Uncle Derek screamed, struggling wildly. "It was all Whitney. She brought the money. Ask her." Aunt Brenda started wailing loudly at the table, grabbing Tyler, who was sobbing in terror as officers secured the venue. My mother stood alone in the center of the head table. Her red dress was stained dark with spilled wine. Her hair, which she had spent hours getting done that morning, was disheveled. She looked at the police, looked at the shouting guests, and then turned her wide, terrified eyes toward. She clutched her chest, her body suddenly arching backward just as it had in our living room 2 weeks ago. My heart," she gasped, falling onto her knees, rolling her eyes back. "I'm die. Gemma, call an ambulance. I'm die." The room went quiet for a beat. A local paramedic who happened to be attending the banquet walked over, pulled out his penlight and checked her eyes. He felt her pulse for 3 seconds, then stood back up, wiping his hands on a napkin. "Her pulse is 72. Blood pressure is completely normal," the paramedic said, loudly to the room. "She's faking it." Laughter, harsh, cruel, mocking laughter, erupted across the banquet hall. "Faking a heart attack twice," a neighbor sneered. "What kind of mother does that to her child? Shameful, utter trash." My mother's eyes snapped open. The tears of theatrical guilt vanished, replaced by a dark, venomous fury. She scrambled to her feet, ignoring the cameras pointed at her from every angle, and rushed toward the stage like a wild animal. "You ungrateful brat," she shrieked, her voice reaching an ear-splitting pitch. "I raised you. I gave you life. I fed you for 18 years. You destroyed your own family for a bunch of strangers." I stood behind the podium, watching her approach. I didn't back up. I didn't flinch. "You didn't raise me, Whitney," I said into the microphone, my voice steady, cold and clear. "My scholarships paid my tuition. My flyer distribution paid my food. The recyclables I picked up off the street paid my clothes." I looked down at her red dress. "You didn't sacrifice for me. You sacrificed me for Derek. And when that wasn't enough, you tried to sell me to a criminal for $50,000. You belong to me," she screamed, reaching up to grab my trench coat. "You came out of my stomach. Without me, you're nothing. You think you can go to college now. The application portal is locked. You're stuck in this town forever. You hear me? Forever." I reached into my inner pocket and pulled out a crisp, white envelope bearing a gold crest. I unfolded the paper and held it up right in front of her face. "Northwood State University," I read aloud into the microphone. "Honors. Admissions program. Early direct enrollment. Confirmed 3 weeks ago." My mother froze. The regular application portal was just bait, I whispered, leaning close so only she could hear my final words. "I was accepted before you even thought about taking my phone. Your sabotage was completely useless." The white paper fluttered in front of her eyes. The official gold seal of the state's top flagship university gleamed under the stage lights. My mother stared at the crest. Her breath hitched, her pupils shrinking to tiny black dots. She realized then, with absolute, crushing clarity, that every lie she had told, every dollar she had stolen, every scheme she had crafted with Martin Parker had done nothing to stop me. She had destroyed her brother, ruined her reputation, facing criminal investigation, and lost her daughter forever. All for an empty portal. 3 days later, the news of the Grand Oak banquet scandal had completely overtaken the county. Martin Parker and Logan were held without bail pending trial. Investigations into the local admissions office led to the arrest of 2 municipal officials involved in financial aid tampering. Uncle Derek was served with multiple lawsuits from illegal gambling syndicates after Martin Parker's firm instantly revoked his security job offer. My mother sat in a metal chair inside the police station's interrogation wing, her red dress rumpled, dark circles carved deep under her eyes. A state investigator sat across from her, flipping through a folder packed with screenshots, audio transcripts, and bank statements. "Whitney Richmond," the investigator said flatly, "you are being charged with reckless child endangerment, conspiracy to commit fraud, and illegal obstruction of educational records. Furthermore, the State Department of Human Services has opened an audit into the $3,000 of state academic prize money you illegally seized from your daughter's account during her junior year." My mother's hands trembled on the table. "I'm her mother. A mother has the right to manage her child's money." Not when that child is a minor and the money is state scholarship funds, the investigator replied coldly. You will be paying that back to the state with interest. The metal door opened. I walked into the room carrying a single black leather duffel bag. When my mother saw me, a flash of desperate hope lit up her eyes. She stood up, reaching across the table. Gemma, tell them. Tell them it was all a mistake. Tell them you forgive me. We're family, Gemma. You can't let your own mother go to prison. I stopped 2 feet from the table. I looked at her. This woman who had spent 18 years convincing me that I owed her my life, my freedom, and my future. I signed the legal emancipation and familial severance papers this morning. I said quietly. From a legal standpoint, we are no longer related. Her hand froze in midair. What did you say? I am legally withdrawing my student record from this county. I continued, my voice calm, unhurried, and light. The State Housing Authority has already cleared me to move into the Northwood campus dorms early. I leave on the noon train. Gemma, please. She began to weep, real tears streaming down her hollow cheeks, her knees buckling as she sank back into the chair. I'm sorry. I was wrong. I just didn't want to be alone. I was scared of growing old with no one around. You weren't scared of being alone, I replied, looking down at her. You were scared of losing your free source of income. You wanted a slave to pay for Derek's debts and buy your gold necklaces. I pulled out a small, worn pair of winter boots from my duffel bag, the $30 pair she had bought me 6 years ago, the only thing she had ever purchased for me with her own money. I placed them gently on the metal table. Thank you for the boots, I said softly. We're even now. I turned around and walked toward the exit. Gemma, she shrieked behind me, her voice echoing off the concrete walls of the station, raw and pathetic. Gemma, don't leave me. Gemma. I didn't turn back. I pushed open the heavy glass doors of the police station and stepped out into the bright, warm morning sunlight. 2 months later, the autumn air at Northwood State University was crisp and filled with the scent of fallen oak leaves. Red brick buildings with ivy-covered walls stretched across the massive green campus. Students walked in groups, laughing, carrying textbooks, drinking coffee. Under the bright blue sky, I sat on a wooden bench near the central library, a laptop resting on my knees, a warm cup of tea in my hand. My phone buzzed with an email update from the state prosecutor's office. Case update. State versus Parker et al. Martin Parker sentenced to 8 years for federal wire fraud and bribery. Logan Parker sentenced to 12 years for assault, felony harassment, and violation of probation. Derek Richmond ordered to forfeit all assets to cover gambling debts. Currently under court-ordered labor program. Whitney Richmond convicted of child endangerment and fraud. Sentenced to 3 years. Probation, 500 hours of community service, and full restitution of seized scholarship funds. I closed the email. I felt no overwhelming joy, no dark satisfaction. Just a quiet, clean sense of finality. They were ghosts now, fading behind the high brick walls of my new life. Hey, Gemma. A girl with short curly hair and bright round glasses came running across the lawn, waving a stack of flyers. It was Maya, my dorm roommate and lab partner in the honors biochemistry program. The professor approved our research proposal. Maya gasped, collapsing onto the bench beside me, grinning from ear to ear. We got the lab grant. Full funding. For the spring semester. I looked at the approval stamp on the paper, feeling a slow, genuine smile spread across my face. Full funding? I asked. Every single cent, Maya laughed, bumping her shoulder against mine. Come on. We're celebrating. The dining hall has fresh apple pie today. I packed my laptop into my backpack, zipped it up, and stood up under the golden canopy of the oak trees. The sky above Northwood was vast, open, and completely free. No hidden cameras. No alter portals. No sold futures. I took a deep breath of the cool autumn air, adjusted my bag on my shoulders, and walked forward into the sunshine.